Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to this PTV World Special. I am Omar Khalid. But today we have the rare opportunity to be talking to some veterans who've been instrumental as far as Pakistan's space program is concerned. You think, which space program? Well, to all of you who do not know, it was way back in 1962 that Pakistan launched its first rocket into space. The rocket was known as Rehbar-1. It was on the 7th of June 1962 that this event took place. I'm sure a lot of you do not know about this. That is why we have had the privilege and we've brought together a number of people who were instrumental behind Rehbar-1. But before we go to these guests, let's watch this short report on Rehbar-1.
1961. The Russians have put the first man in space.
Great success in space when the Russians pushed a man across the threshold.
The Americans are caught napping.
We choose to go to the moon in this decade and do the other things, not because they are easy, but because they are hard.
A challenged NASA was in desperate need for data over South Asia, with Pakistan's President Ayub Khan and his scientific advisor Professor Dr. Abdul Salam present in the US.
Glittering gala is a fitting climax to his Washington visit.
NASA cashes in to explore Pakistan's interest in space.
Professor Salam, who was very fond of Punjabi, he looked at me and he said, "Ki bhai Tariq, ki khayal hai? Ki Tariq, what do you think?" So I said that this would be our dream come true.
Thus began the journey that created history.
In the beginning, we resisted. Okay, we are in nuclear engineering, we don't want to change.
Wallops Island was a new experience for both sides.
Oh, where are you from? Pakistan? Okay. चुप कर जाते थे. फिर अगले दिन आते थे, oh, I saw it in the atlas where Pakistan is.
Meanwhile, back in Pakistan, it was a different story.
फौरन ही next day मुझे सोनमियानी बीच जाना पड़ा था to establish a weather station there, and there was nothing else. कोई चीज़ दूर दूर तक नहीं थी, सिर्फ समंदर की लहरों की आवाज़ें आया करती थी और वो बैठ के हम गिना करते थे.
But it's not long before Sonmiani Beach is buzzing with activity.
I must say कि दिन रात काम करते थे. रात को कभी जा रहे हैं कि यार ये काम रह गया जाएं.
It was hard going, but the team was single-minded.
सोनमियानी में उन दिनों जून की बात है, तो आप अंदाज़ा कर सकते हैं कि कितनी गर्मी थी.
Though a desolate and dangerous area, the team remains undeterred.
अगर आप वहाँ पे गलती करेंगे तो I would have been blown to pieces.
The objective is clear, but success was at the mercy of nature.
ये दरअसल ये जो तजर्बा था सोडियम वेपर एक्सपेरिमेंट, उसके लिए एक बड़ी शार्प विंडो है.
तो बाद का तो हम सारी रात तक हम खड़े रहते थे वहाँ पे, इंतज़ार, हर चीज़ तैयार है, सिर्फ बटन दबाने की देर है, लेकिन वेदर क्लियर नहीं हो रहा है.
Finally, the team's resilience and hard work pays off.
और जनाब बड़ा रात दिन काम करने के बाद 7 जून 1962 को पहला पाकिस्तान का साइंटिफिक रॉकेट लॉन्च किया.
The world is in awe and disbelief.
And Blizzard said, "Erzal, why do you say that? I mean, Tariq is here, he's telling us about it." Erzal's answer was, "Turkey has not done it. How can Pakistan have done it?" Only a 5-member team, and none of the other countries have done that pioneering work with 5 members.
The story of the Fantastic Five comes alive in Rehbar-1, Pakistan's journey into space.
Well, the story of the Fantastic Five is one story we would like to share with you during the course of the show. What happened? How did all these 5 brilliant people come together and create Pakistan's first rocket and put it into space on the 7th of June in 1962. Despite all the hindrances, despite all the difficulties, despite the heat that was there at the Somniani beach, they managed to put Pakistan on the space program, on the global space program. Out of the Fantastic Five, we've got the Fantastic Three. Here, One of those fantastic five is in the studios with me, whereas the rest we'll be talking to during the course of the show online. Let me introduce to you my guest, one of the fantastic five who is there in the studios. His name is Salim Mehmud. He's a former chairman, Suparco. And you were, sir, one of the fantastic five, as the report very ably said. When somebody calls you a fantastic person or one of the fantastic five, what does it make you feel?
Well, it doesn't make me feel very excited, except to say that I'm happy that at least there is an acknowledgement of the contributions that have been made by this particular team who was instrumental in bringing a brand new technology in the country at times when even the developed countries had not established their space organizations. So I personally feel that it has been a great privilege for us to be able to embark upon a technology that was so brand new, and space organization establishment in Pakistan in 1961-62 was a great step forward. So we feel privileged that we were chosen.
Of course, and so do we, in fact, being Pakistanis, feel privileged when we know of the history of Pakistan's space program way back in the 1960s and the first rocket that was launched there. Thank you. We'll be continuing our conversation, but online we've been joined by some of your colleagues who were part and instrumental to that program. Well, Salim Saab, there are other colleagues of yours who were part of this instrumental program, and of course they join us online from different parts of the world, including Pakistan. Tariq Mustafa Saab, team leader Suparco, also former Secretary Defense Production, joins us online. Tariq Saab, thank you very much to have joined us, and it's a privilege to have you here in this show and to see your face after decades. And the first thing that comes to my mind, Tariq Saab, is the fact that you have been part of such an important program to launch Pakistan into space, not right now, but way back in the 1960s. Looking back, what is the first thing that comes to your mind when you think of those years?
Well, it was a privilege. I happened to be doing my fellowship on behalf of Pakistan Atomic Energy Commission in the Oak Ridge National Laboratories in Tennessee, USA. And that was the year when President Ayub had been invited by President Kennedy, and Professor Salam was accompanying him. And one evening in mid-June, the telephone rings, and at the other end is Professor Salam telling me that you have to join me in Washington for an important meeting. So there I was, and both of us walked into the spanking new offices of the National Aeronautics and Space Administration of US on the Mall. And the director there welcomed us, and he said, I'll come straight to the point. We are lucky to have your president here who has challenged America to put a man on the moon and bring him back safely to Earth within the 60s. And when our people have studied this, they find that Indian Ocean region is a black hole of data. So we badly need upper atmospheric wind and temperature data for our rocket launch to the moon. And we are offering all the countries on the littoral of the Indian Ocean that if they're interested, they can build rocket range and launch sounding rockets, experimental rockets, and we will help you. So what is your reaction? And that is when Professor Salam asked me, ki bhai, tera ki khayal hai? What do you think? How did he know me? Well, he was the one who had selected me for the Atomic Energy Commission back in London in, was it 1957? Out of a group of 17, which the commission had been interviewing. And I think he was impressed by my performance there. And ever since then, we became pretty close, and my fondness and respect for Professor Salam had grown. So when this occasion arose, he thought of me and called me up. So that is how it all began. And the American director, he looked at his watch and he said, the young man appears to be keen, so we have no time to lose. And he said that at 1 o'clock, and this was at 10:30 in the morning, he said at 1 o'clock, a NASA plane leaves Washington National Airport for their nearest rocket range on Wallops Island in the Atlantic Ocean. We will put the young man on this plane. Within 2 hours, we'll put him on the plane, and I'll ask the director to keep the range open. He'll be shown around. He'll be put up the night there, and we expect him to be back here tomorrow morning on this 8 o'clock plane, which comes back along with his report. Now, that was the speed at which NASA was working. And I am so glad to say that at the end of 9 months, Pakistan beat them to it in the sense that the Americans were surprised how a country like ours could build a rocket range, train the people, get all the equipment, and launch these rockets in time, down to the day, and start obtaining.
Tariq Saab, we've got other colleagues of yours who were instrumental as far as the launch of Rehbar-1 was also concerned. We've also been joined by Sikandar Zaman Saab, who's a former chairman, Suparco, and of course he joins us online as well. Sikandar Zaman Saab, welcome to this very special show on PTV World, and of course it's an honor to be talking to you. I hope you can hear me properly.
Anji, I can hear you, but I will, if you don't mind, would start with the ghazal usne chhedi mujhe saaz dena, zara umre rafta ko awaaz dena. Now it's 59 years old story that you want us to remember and repeat. If I may, I will also like to tell about myself. I joined Atomic Energy Commission on 5th June 1961. And we were put through a orientation and a training program, because at that time in engineering colleges, there were no subjects related to space or Atomic Energy Commission or nuclear sciences. So we didn't know anything about it. So there was an orientation program through which we were being familiarized with atomic energy and nuclear sciences and nuclear science and technology. This was going on, and most of the people who were recently hired, they were being placed at various universities. And I was placed in a University of McGill, Canada, for MS in nuclear engineering. And this was going on, and I remember in August sometime, I received a message that Chairman Dr. Usmani wants to see me. I was a little bit worried. I don't know what have I done wrong. I hadn't met Dr. Usmani till then. Anyway, next day I went and I was ushered in his office. He was very nice. He said, "Hello, Zaman, how are you?" And then he said, "How was the training going on?" This and that. And after some time, he said, "Look, we have a new program. It is related with rocketry and space, etc. Would you be interested in joining that group and our team to for a while?" I was taken aback. Naturally, I just was mum for a while because I didn't know what to say. Then he said, "Look, we are sending so many engineers, scientists abroad for nuclear sciences, nuclear engineering." And he said, as in Urdu, he said, "Eent uthaoge to usme se nuclear sciences or nuclear engineer niklenge. Pick up the break and there will be some. So why don't you think this is a new field?" And then I must say that it was naturally very exciting to hear about, because on those days we were talking of Sputniks, explorers, and things like that. So I said, "Yes, sir, why not?" Immediately called the person who was placing people in various universities. He said, "Cancel his admission in McGill University and get him a visa for USA to go."
All right,
as
Sikandar
soon
Saab,
as
there's one very interesting question that I'd like to ask you. You were the youngest member of the team, if I'm not wrong. Did you ever
I
feel
think so.
apprehensive or scared or not as confident, because there were others who were part of that team who were much senior to you? And
No,
who was your main mentor? Who was your main guide during this whole process?
Listen, I never felt that there's something which I cannot do or will not be able to do. In fact, Dr. Usmani, after having said all that and I having agreed to this proposal, he said, you see, you have a very long nose. You know, if you go there and if you don't do a good work, I will hold you by your nose. I mean, in a joking way, he said that. And then he said, well, you go there, keep your eyes open, keep your ears open. And I want you to learn everything, how to assemble this thing, how to put it together and whatever is the listen. And so now you are on. So that was how I got onto the team. And I think in early September, in fact, it was an inaugural flight for Swiss Air on which I boarded for Zurich and heading towards NASA, Washington, D.C. I met Tariq Mustafa and Salim Mehmud at the airport of Wallops Island. That was our first meeting together. That
all right, wonderful. I'll go to Salim Mehmud who's in the studios with me. In fact, let me ask you, the first meeting that Sikandar Zaman Saab talks about that he had with you. What was the first impression that you had of him when you met him?
My first impression was that he is a very practical man. He's very easy to get along with, very friendly, very hardworking. I have a very positive impression of Mr. Sikandar Zaman, and I still cherish my friendship with him. And I enjoy my good old days of 62, 61 and all the pioneering days subsequently that we had together. I really enjoy, and when I want to relax, I phone him.
All right. And how about your relationship with Tariq Saab and the rest? Do you still keep in touch with them? Do you still remember fondly those old times of the 1960s when you worked so diligently together as a team to start Pakistan's space program?
You talked about Tariq Mustafa Sahab. Let me say that he is an extraordinary person in many ways. He is very easy to get along with. He is extremely friendly. He remains cool against all provocation. He is intellectually very strong, very intelligent. He is honest to the core, and a very dear, very loyal friend who will go out of his way, even at his own personal discomfort, to comfort his friends. So he is an extraordinary person, and as far as I'm concerned, I have very, very fond memories of my togetherness with Tariq Mustafa Sahab.
Of course.
As I said, he's a very special person, and one could talk hours and hours at a stretch. But I can tell you that he's special. I remember I can give you one incident, that we were coming back from Oak Ridge National Laboratory, and Tariq Sahab was driving his car, and when we had reached the apartment, there was a lady who was backing her car, and she rammed into the side of Tariq Sahab's car, and she dented the car of Tariq Sahab. So anyway, the usual procedures took place, and finally Tariq Sahab got a check from the insurance company, and he comes to me, Salim, what is this? I'm getting a check which is more than the price I paid to buy this car. Now what do I do? I want to return the money. I said, yes, very, very, very laudable objective and thought. And lo and behold, he makes his own personal check, and he refunded most of the money that the insurance company gave to him.
Oh.
So you can see he is, as I said, honest to the core.
Exactly.
He is a man of principles.
Exactly. There were certain values in all of the team members that were there, whether it be Tariq Saab, whether it be you. Speaking of you, Salim Saab, did you feel any hesitance when you were told to become part of this program? Because you were changing your field a little bit and coming into space technology.
As I said before, luckily for me,
I had gone through a very rigorous course of nuclear engineering at the Oak Ridge School of Reactor Technology. And that commenced sometime in the month of August, in the preliminary, they used to call, August 1960. And then it was 3 months were preliminary, and then we started a regular program for 1 year, very hard program. So I was trained as a hardcore nuclear engineering man. So to me, when this proposition came that this is what is intended, was a rather bizarre type of suggestion. And I had resistance in my mind that, look, we have been trained, we have been educated for nuclear engineering, and we don't want to go into a brand new field called space science and space technology. But knowing who were in it, Professor Abdul Salam, who was the mentor, so to say, and who was the visionary who thought of the program, and Tariq Mustafa was in it, and we were very, very close together as friends. So I said, all right, let the friends be together. So I decided after some time that we go along as a team.
All right.
And we were, of course, Tariq Sahib and myself, we were the first to have arrived at NASA Wallops Island in Virginia. And we were the first international team to have ever arrived at NASA Wallops Island for this particular type of training and assignment. So it was a great privilege, and we were received by NASA team and at the highest level by the director of the station, Mr. Krieger, and the chief of flight test operations, Mr. John C. Palmer. And we were given a lot of honor, and we were looked after very well, to the point that the national flag of Pakistan was hoisted outside our dormitory.
That is wonderful.
Yeah.
So, sir, Professor Dr. Abdul Salam, what are your earliest memories of him when you first met him, and how would you describe him as a person, as a professional?
Professor Abdul Salam met me during the 50s, and he was scientific advisor to the President of Pakistan. And Dr. Ishrat Hussain Usmani, who was the chairman of the Atomic Energy Commission, he was working with Professor Salam in the sense that both were moving in unison. And Professor Abdul Salam several times would come to our laboratory and would interview us. And he interviewed me also, he interviewed others, and he would make recommendations for the people he would interview as to whether they should be retained, whether they should be sent for abroad for higher studies or training and so on. So I found him down to earth, very straightforward, very simple, very clear in expression, both verbally and in writing. And he was in love with Pakistan, that's my feeling. And whenever the word Pakistan would go to him, the tears would shed in his eyes. And let me now tell you one interesting thing, that I had the privilege of seeing Professor Abdul Salam in Oxford, I think it was 93. And I went there from London with a bouquet of flowers. And I went to his house, and the nurse came out, and he said, sir, very sorry to say that he is not accepting any flowers, and he is not accepting any visitors, because he is in a grave state. He is very seriously sick. So I said, okay, I keep the bouquet with me, and I'll go back to London, but at least go and tell him. I will write down my name, go and show him this name. So she said, all right, that much I can do. So she took this thing to Professor Abdul Salam in his room, and lo and behold, she came smiling, her whole disposition was changed. She said, please come and sit down. I said, what happened? And she said that Professor Salam had said, bring the bouquet in, and I am going to see Salim. So please sit down. And after about 15 minutes, Professor Abdul Salam was brought on a wheelchair, and then the nurse seated him on a sofa next to me, and I had a heart-to-heart talk, and believe me, he was, there were tears in his eyes, his voice was very, very feeble, but he spent good 45 minutes with me talking.
All right.
And after a few months of my meeting with him, he died. He was in an advanced stage of Parkinson's disease. So my own assessment of Professor Abdul Salam is that he was deeply in love with Pakistan.
And of course, we'll now go, of course, to Tariq Mustafa Saab, because he also had a special relationship with Dr. Abdul Salam. Tariq Mustafa Saab, you of course recited a phrase in Punjabi as far as your reaction and your entry into this fantastic 5 team is concerned, and from Professor Dr. Abdul Salam. How would you describe Professor Dr. Abdul Salam as a visionary, as a patriot, and as a thorough professional?
Well, as Salim has explained, I totally endorse that. His first loyalty, in my opinion, was to the country of Pakistan. His second loyalty was to the Islamic world. And his third loyalty was to the developing world. And of course, at the back, his loyalties were with all the scientific world, you see. Professor Salam's loyalty to the developing world showed up when he was given charge of establishing the Theoretical Physics Center. And it went through a bidding process amongst different countries and cities. And the city of Trieste in Italy finally made the best bid, and the center went to Trieste. Professor Salam was not entirely happy with that, because he was very keen to have the center established in Pakistan. But despite the fact that the center was established finally in Trieste, and Professor Salam stayed as the director of the center throughout his remaining life, he made sure that the majority of the people who visited that center as fellows and scholarship holders came from the developing world. And even at times, people ask this question that why is this so? He said, well, the developing countries deserve this, and I come from there, so I see no hesitation in doing so.
Our conversation with these wonderful, wonderful leaders who put Pakistan into space continues, but after this short break. Stay tuned.
It is the largest mosque in South Asia and one of the largest mosques in the world. The Vassal Mosque was the largest mosque in the world from 1986 until 1993, when it was overtaken in size upon the completion of the Hassan II Mosque in Casablanca, Morocco. Subsequent expansions of the Masjid al-Haram, the Grand Mosque of Mecca, and the Masjid al-Nabwi, the Prophet's Mosque in Medina, Saudi Arabia during the 1990s, relegated Vassal Mosque to 4th place in terms of size. Architectural wonders of Pakistan.
You're watching the PTV World Special on Pakistan's space program. Way back in the 1960s, on the 7th of June 1962, Rehbar-1, Pakistan's first rocket, in collaboration with NASA of the United States of America, was launched. And we are talking to the people who were behind the launch of Rehbar-1. Now let's go to Sikandar Zaman Saab, who was the youngest team member at that time. Sikandar Zaman Saab, what does this experience of being part of those fantastic 5 mean to you today, and even at that time when you were constructing that rocket and putting it into space?
When you call fantastic, I feel this is a fantastic word to call as fantastic. It's just like human beings dedicated to work, hardworking, and we are privileged in a way that we were chosen and we were assigned this thing to be done. But is I don't feel that it's something that I have done, nobody else could have done it. No, it's something, it required dedication, it required hard work, and things like that. And being with the Tariq Mustafa and Salim Mahmood Saab was again a privilege, very senior people, nice people. I learned a lot from them, especially from Tariq Mustafa, because he was our leader there. So at Wallab Salem, it was always with him that we interacted, and especially his background and my background being a mechanical side were more akin to discuss these things. Salim Mahmood Sahab was more in electronics than in mechanical side. So it was a long association with both Salim Mahmood Saab and Tariq Mustafa Saab. Of course, Tariq Mustafa Saab left us earlier and joined the Defense Production Division. But with Salim Mahmood, I think we had a very, very long association, many, many memories, both happy and both hate and love type equations. But it's always a pleasure talking to him. As he said, we we do a long talks whenever we both have time. We remember those incidents at Wall of Silent and at so many rocket range. And sometimes we also exchange some of the photographs that I am still having with me.
All right.
So that's how it is.
Sikandar Zaman Saab, you've been instrumental in Pakistan's space program way back in the 1960s. Now, with the young generation, a lot of whom do not know about Rehbar-1, that is the whole essence of bringing this show to them so that they understand how instrumental Pakistan was even way back in the 1960s when not so many countries were involving themselves in the space program, and Pakistan put itself amongst those committee of nations who went into space in those formative years. What is your advice to young people when they want to pursue the same field as yours in taking up these huge challenges as you took in the 1960s?
But may I ask, how can I don't see you on the screen, on PTV screen? Because, I hear your voice very well. Anyway, I think during my whole life, I found that a new thing, a new challenge is always very exciting and energizing to take it up and do it, instead of doing something which have been done by so many people. So to the younger engineers or scientists who are aspiring to be in this line, I think they should always accept new challenges, new horizons, and work dedicatedly towards them. And the pleasure of achieving those is far more than rather than doing a routine work, daily routine work. When you take up something and you say, well, I'm going to do it, and then you do it, the pleasure of this, like I always said, watching a rocket take off had been my pleasure throughout my career. There's hardly a rocket which was fired from somewhere in the rocket which I may not have seen. And every time people ask that, what gives you the most pleasure? I said, to see a rocket take off successfully from the land. That's all.
Right.
So
Wonderful.
you choose a field in which it's not only as a work, but it also gives you a pleasure and enjoyment in achieving the results. So that's what I like.
I think
Khalid
that definitely are wonderful words
or
to
art or anything, I think.
with you,
pick up a
Sikandar
thing.
Zaman Saab. Thank you very much to have joined us, and thank you very much again from the bottom of my heart and from the bottom of all the hearts of Pakistanis to have put Pakistan into space, to have been part of that team that put Pakistan into space way back in the 1960s. Let's come back to Salim Saab. Salim Saab, you may, it must be a lot of memories must be going through your mind when you are watching Tariq Saab and you are watching your other colleagues talk about this program. When we talk of Somniani Beach, where the whole process began and you were working day and night, it was very hot. And of course, there were certain issues as well with the heat, with the food as well. Under those conditions, how was it working for you, for the other team members?
Well, we were really not thinking about our environment because we had a very lofty goal in front of us. And that was to launch a space program for Pakistan. It was a big challenge. And to be very honest, these are the type of considerations which are personal comfort and so on. And we were all young people. These things never came to our mind. We were working hard. And even now, when we go back to those times, we feel very happy and thankful to God that we got the opportunity to join into this program. It was a very challenging time. And by the way, I was the one who stayed there for 8 or 9 long years as the range officer and director of operations. So these are the challenges which young men should be ready to accept. And we should be ready to go out and throw away our personal comforts, but go for a goal which is some lofty, higher goal.
That is true. But Salim Saab, there was a Polish director of Suparco at that time, at the Somniani beach, Mr. Vladislav Turovic. How would you describe him?
No, there was no such person at that time. This whole thing came much, much later.
Okay.
And that was during the 70s.
Okay.
We are talking of 60s. 60s, that's the team that you are talking about.
All right.
And that's it. And we had set up all these facilities.
All
and
right.
by the way, this goal could be accomplished in record time because each member had been given a defined goal, a defined responsibility. And these members were doing their part of the job.
Okay.
For example, I was told to make sure that all the firing mechanisms for rocket motors, they were there. You are responsible for that. You are responsible, for example, wireless communications and so on. You are responsible for safety. You are responsible for payload testing. You are responsible ultimately for radar tracking and so on. The responsibilities had been very clearly laid out.
All right.
For each member of the staff.
All
and
right.
that this team synergized. They had a lot of respect for one another and moving together even in our most hardest times.
All right.
We enjoyed our company.
I mean, that is the most important. Despite all the hard work, despite the intuitive and innovative work that all of you were doing, you were enjoying that work.
We enjoyed the work.
Exactly. And I think that is very important, to enjoy whatever you do with a lot of zeal, with a lot of passion, in order to bring forth something that changes Pakistan on the global perspective.
Absolutely. And this particular team, I may add here, I'm talking of 60s. And during 60s, a lot of milestone work had been done. This was not the end of it. Once you started firing these rockets, then we thought, why not manufacture these rockets within the country? And that is how the team went to France and they spent time there. And we came soon with the fabrication of our own rockets. At that time, the same very team was working. By the way.
All right, wonderful.
There was no one from outside.
Wonderful. And Salim Saab, we have another team member who also joins us online, Arif Ali, meteorologist, also associated with the Pakistan Atomic Energy Commission. Arif Saab, thank you very much to have joined us and to have, to give us the opportunity to talk about this very important and interesting space program that happened in Pakistan way back in the 1960s. What was your feeling, Arif Saab, on the launch day of Rehbar-1? What was the team going through?
Well, that was my first job. I was very young, and I think I was the first person to go to establish the weather station. And nobody was there at that time. All these 5 top people came after, I think, very late. I was there in January, and I was the only person just to get the weather data. And it was a very great feeling, just see how hard work all the teamwork did. Most of these people did not know me even. I don't think some of them, except Tariq Saab, know me now. So that was a big achievement for the country and for myself. I got a lot of experience working with these top scientists of the country.
All right, Arif Saab, and finally, how does it feel now in 2021 that you achieved something in 1962 that so many countries across the world, even developed countries, had not gone through?
Yes, I mean, it's a very unique feeling thinking about how Pakistan progressed during that time. And it was something which the speed which we were going, particularly in 60s, it is unbelievable considering all what is happening in Pakistan now and after that, unfortunately. So it's a very great feeling. These five fantastic people were great, still are doing their contribution, particularly Dr. Tariq Mustafa. He's doing such a good work in terms of serving the religion and writing the books about explaining the religion.
All right. Thank you very much, Arif Saab, to have joined us. And of course, it's a pleasure to have talked to you. It's a privilege more than a pleasure to have been able to talk to all these great scientists who have been instrumental in putting Pakistan into space. We'll go back to Tariq Mustafa Saab. Tariq Mustafa Saab, NASA, Pakistan collaborated way back in the 1960s for Rehbar-1. What made you choose the nominees for the rocket range? And if one were to ask you in 2 or 3 phrases what Somniani Beach and the 1960s meant to you in 2021, what would it be?
Well, first of all, it was a great privilege to have gotten this opportunity of serving the country. So far as the team was concerned, my background was mechanical engineering, so I first looked for somebody on the electronics, electrical side. That happened to be Salim Mehmud close by in Oak Ridge, so that was a natural choice. The other 3 members, we didn't meet them. They were selected by the commission in Karachi, but the fields were clear. The experiment was connected with meteorology. So the Met Department sent one of their deputy directors, Mr. Rahmatullah, and we needed a young mechanical engineer to work with me, and that was Sikandar Zaman. The 5th member was AZ Faruqi. He was a retired lieutenant from the Air Force Education Service, and his was also electronics as well as communications. And one of the requirements of the this experiment that the rocket Rehbar carried, the so-called sodium vapor experiment, was that it would be photographed from a number of sites around Sonmiani. And we used the Air Force cameras and Air Force people. So it all melded together. The 5-member team sort of covered all the essential areas. And I'm so grateful and happy that we could meld together as a team and achieve the results, which quite frankly even surprised the Americans. 7th June, after the rocket had been launched and the experiment had been completed, Professor Salam and Dr. Usmani, who were right there at the range, they were overjoyed and they hugged each team member. And the next day, I received a handwritten note from Dr. Salam, which said that he was proud of the team and their achievement, and it reminded him of the glorious days of Islamic science of the olden days. And in the end, I'd like to thank all my team members who not only did the jobs assigned to them professionally, but they also showed a level of cooperation which is a must in a complex venture of this type, and it is needed if we are to grow as a country and a society. And I will especially like to thank the role played by Dr. Abdul Salam in using his high-level contacts, and equally Dr. Usmani, who placed the resources of the commission at the disposal of this team so that we could achieve the milestone. And last but not the least, his thanks are due to NASA for their generosity in training us, in providing surplus equipment, and in all kinds of ways. Without their support, we would not have been able to accomplish the establishment of the range.
It was an absolute privilege to have talked to you, and I feel so proud of being a Pakistani today in 2021, listening to all of you greats talk about Pakistan's space program in the 1960s, the zeal, the passion, the effort that all of you put together to put Pakistan on the global map. And as it was said during the course of the program, that many did not know what Pakistan was, where it was situated. Pakistan established itself and made itself known amongst the Committee of Nations in the 1960s through the launch of the Rehbar-1 program, and that was just the beginning. And of course, now we've got a very strong program that goes on under Suparco, under the Pakistan Atomic Energy Commission, and we are so proud of Pakistan and all the people that have put Pakistan on that pedestal way back in the 1960s. Tariq Mustafa Saab, thank you very much to have joined us. Sikandar Zaman Saab, thank you very much to have joined us. Arif Ali Saab, thank you very much to have joined us. And in the studios, Salim Mehmud Saab. Sir, it's wonderful to see you face to face, and to, it brings such a lot of joy, almost, I'm teary-eyed seeing all of you people, and, just thinking of those times in the 1960s when you people were working together passionately to do something for Pakistan and to put Pakistan into space. And there, despite the hurdles, despite the issues, despite the heat, despite whatever under conditions you were confronted with, you went all through and you put Pakistan on the world map as far as that concerned. I salute you, sir. I salute you, all of you who are there, who have joined us today, and of course, Professor Abdul Salam Saab as well, who put all of you together and made Pakistan a reality as far as the space program and the nuclear program is concerned. Thank you very much, sir. What a pleasure, what a privilege.
Thank you.
Allah Hafiz, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you feel as proud, patriotic as I am feeling right now. Allah Hafiz.